All right, welcome to Dieting for Dummies. And so, in the simplest put way, you're able to understand dieting so that you can reach your fitness goals in a sustainable way without having to sacrifice any of your favorite foods and all things like that. So, in this, you're going to be able to understand your proteins, what calories you should be aiming for depending on your goals, and this is so that you actually know how to diet for the rest of your life, right? Very, very simply put, in the way that even a third grader can understand. And so, before we get into it, it's going to be dieting so that you never have to track macros and also never miss out on dessert. And so, I just want to start by saying that all diets are honestly the same, right? Keto, carnivore, vegetarian. It doesn't matter what it is that helped you. At the end of the day, it's calories in, calories out. If you want to gain weight, be in a surplus. If you want to lose weight, be in a deficit. That's about it. And so, yeah, before we can get into those two other things, we got to look at the three non negotiables, which are what you're going to have to live by in order for this to actually work. I know it sounds awesome to hear that, oh, I don't have to skip out on dessert and I don't have to skip out on this and that, and I can still get a lean aesthetic physique. That's crazy. But you have to live by these things: your calorie goal, your protein target, and your activity. Don't mind my writing, all right? So, how can you actually calculate your calories and protein? These are the two things to help you, and then we'll get into activity later. And so let's start by calories. Find your maintenance calories, then determine whether you want to soft gain, hard gain, soft cut, or hard cut. So you are able to do this by using a TDEE calculator to find your maintenance calories. You punch in all of the stats: your height, your weight, your age, and also it'll ask you your activity level, and you should always estimate downwards, estimate lower, because these calorie calculators are not accurate, and you just want like a solid base or an idea before you get started anywhere, you know? And so by understanding your maintenance calories, you'll able to see if you want to gain weight slowly, gain weight extremely, maybe you're extremely anorexic, or maybe lose weight slowly just to cut down, or maybe lose weight significantly because you are obese, right? And so from your maintenance calories, you'll be able to find your calorie goal, right? And this is an example right here. And so before you get into it though, remember that it's not a race or set in stone. You're able to adjust accordingly depending on what you want to achieve. All right, very, very simple. So lose or gain weight slower or faster by increasing or decreasing the calories. You know, a reference calorie range that I provided for you is, if you want a soft gain, you're probably adding 250 calories to 500 calories above your maintenance. And what I mean by maintenance calories is it's the calories that you eat on an everyday basis for you to just stay the same where you are right now, right? The same weight and everything. And so that means a soft gain would be adding 250 to 500 calories on top of that. Now, for a hard gain, it'd be 500 to 1,000 calories, which would be like you'd be gaining weight pretty rapidly, you know? Soft cut, 250 to 500. Hard cut, you'd be cutting off 500 to 1,000 calories. And so, yeah. All right, now let's look at how we can actually calculate protein. And so moving on to here, right? So to understand protein, a gram of protein times your body weight is how much you should be aiming to eat on a daily basis. Wow, such intricate math. No, but to lose weight, you go for your desired body weight. Let's say you're 300 pounds and you want to get to 200 pounds. Then eat 200 grams of protein every single day. Gaining weight, your desired body weight. So if you're 100 pounds, you want to get to 180 pounds, then eat 180 grams of protein every single day. You know, something like that. And then for maintenance, it would just be your current body weight times 1. That's your protein. So however much you weigh right now is how much protein you're going to be eating. You know, pretty simple. Understanding this logic, you now obviously and very simply know how much protein you need on a daily basis to sustain your muscle, you know? And so 100 grams of protein is either 16 ounces or 1 pound of any lean meat. And this is the actual magic here, because a pound of any lean meat at all is just going to be equal to 100 grams of protein. And so by understanding this, like, I know that a pack of like 96% lean ground beef would be 100 grams of protein. I'll eat 1 pound, 1.5 packs. So that's super easy. So I've hit my protein already. Of course, I wouldn't do that because I like to switch it up, you know, but it really came down to it, that's how easy it is to get protein in. And this protein target can be hit by any source of meat you choose. And so here's some references on protein so that you kind of understand what we're going to be going into, right? So a gram of protein is averaged out to 4 calories, meaning 100 grams of protein would be 400 calories. 150 grams of protein would be 600 calories. 200 grams of protein is 1,000 calories. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, understanding this math, right? We're able to actually put it together, since now you know your calorie total and the amount of protein you need. You're able to subtract the calories from protein and then see what you have left. So let's say in this example, the calorie goal is 2,500 and the protein target is 200 grams. All right, 200 grams of protein, like I just said, is 1,000 calories. Let's say this person wants to lose weight, right? So he's eating 2,500 calories a day and he has to eat 200 grams of protein, non-negotiable. He has to eat it. And so all you have to do is subtract how many calories your protein is from your calorie goal, and the rest of the calories you get to spend on anything. And so this is how most people sustainably stay lean year round, stay jacked and shredded. This is what I do, because all I know is I need I currently weigh around 140 pounds, and so I try to eat 150 grams just for the evenness of it. And so if I make sure that I'm eating 150 grams of protein every day, which is 1.5 pounds of lean meat, then I get to eat whatever I want to fill in the rest of the calories. I have, like, depending on the person, you know, you'll have more or less, right? And I want to maintain, so I have a lot of calories to spend. But keep in mind that the more junky the food is, the easier it is to overeat. Meaning, like, so the bakery products would be like cake, cupcakes, croissants, bread, snacks like chips and all that, drinks, and then processed foods and cereal. You know, these aren't gonna get you satiated. These will not get you satisfied, right? But if you're someone like me who naturally just doesn't really want to eat, you get to eat ice cream, you get to eat whatever, and you would eat less of it, but then, like, it would taste good. But if you're someone who wants to eat a lot, like a lot of volume, then maybe choose more whole foods items so that you can actually eat a lot more. But the logic's still the same. Whatever amount of calories you have left, you're able to spend on anything, literally anything, right? But of course, be mindful. And so, understanding this now, we can go back and look at how this will help you never miss out on dessert. You probably know where I'm going with this, but I'll show you the example I have. So, the secret to eating whatever you want is tracking calories to show you what you can fit on a more frequent basis. I meant to put what there, so, like, yeah. But here it is, all right? Same example, 200 grams of protein a day, 2,500 calories a day as the goal, all right? All you would need to do is track your calories, track your macros, and by tracking it, you actually have measurable data and you have clarity on what you're eating. And so you got to weigh out your lean sources of protein and subtract it from your calorie goal. And it can be anything. It can be shrimp, right? 200 grams of protein worth of shrimp, 200 grams of protein worth of chicken breast, tilapia, ground beef. I've given some examples here and how many calories they average out to be. All right. So subtracting that would give you that remainder, and you can now start tracking also the food that you eat. So look at packaging, weigh it out, right? Have maybe MyFitnessPal for you to do that. Track your protein. It can be whatever. It can be anything, right? As long as you get 200 grams of protein, of course. And then the rest can be filled in with whatever you want as long as it fits in the calories. This gives you so much more, options, right? To choose from. And so like I gave some examples, like a pint of ice cream is 1,000 calories. Donuts are about 200 to 300 calories. Beer is about 200 calories. So tracking grants clarity, and this makes it so that anything that you track will be in there. This is exactly how a lot of people sustainably, lose fat or gain muscle. Now, if you don't want to track, right? The same logic can be applied so that you never have to track, right? And so the secret to never using a food scale and tracking calories or macros would be having discipline and having the math. All right, let me explain. Here is the blueprint. Same example, 200 grams of protein is the target, 2,500 calories is the goal. And so it's just 2 pounds of lean meat and whatever you want. And instead of thinking of it as like numbers and statistics, you should think about it more of like the weight of the food to the protein. So like I said earlier of what I do, it would be like a pound of protein, a pound of ground beef would obviously be 100 grams. And then 8 eggs would be like 50 grams of protein, and then creating a 50-gram protein shake, maybe of like Greek yogurt with protein powder or something, that will be equivalent to 200 grams of protein. So in this, you're going to be looking at labels on the packaging. Another example, 1.5 pounds of chicken breast, right? Maybe from the package, like it says it weighs 1 pound, then use that. And then 1/2 pound of shrimp, right? Maybe it's the frozen ones. You count how many shrimps it is and then how much protein it is. It all comes out to like 200 grams of protein. And as long as you know this, you also are able to like eat whatever here and there. But the reason why I added discipline into this is because ideally 80% of the time you'll have a meal plan, except you wouldn't have to track it, because having a simple rotation of the same proteins, the same meats, makes it so much easier and so much simpler for you to stay disciplined. Like imagine you had the same sort of meals that you have made sure was this amount of protein, this amount of calories, then that's all you need to think about, right? So if every day you're eating either 2 pounds of ground beef, 1 pound of ground beef and 1 pound of chicken, or 1 pound of ground beef and 1 pound of shrimp, or 1 pound of shrimp and 1 pound of tilapia, like 200 grams of protein every single day, and then you have this specific amount of rice, the specific amount of whatever the heck, you're going to have a meal plan that you simply don't have to track. So you don't have to think about statistics, numbers, or having to put the food on the weight scale, even though it takes just a couple of minutes, right? This just saves you the mental effort of doing that as long as you stick to the same rotation of meals. That's the key point. That's the magic. But days that you have to, like, let's say on holiday, or let's say you have a birthday party, as long as you get the 200 grams of protein in, you understand that you have about 1,000 to 1,500 calories more left to spare. And depending on what your fitness goals are, if you want to gain weight, you have way more calories to play with. But if you want to really like hard cut, then maybe you only have like 5 to 800 calories, you know? There's a limit, right? But understanding this, as long as protein is in, then you can go freely. Like, it's okay, you know? And so this is the secret to how even I'm able to consistently eat whatever I choose, like every single day, you know, and still be in decent shape, right? Like, I'm not the best shape, but I've been able to just continuously do this throughout my entire career. Unless I'm on a hard cutting phase where I really want to lean down and look good and maintain as much muscle as possible, I'm not going to track, right? I only track whenever that happens. And so the last part that I haven't mentioned yet is your activity. And this ties it together as well. So going down here, this is very, very important, because if you're not lifting weights and being active regularly, it doesn't matter. Because think about it. If you're gaining weight, right, you'll just get fatter. If you're losing weight, you'll just be a smaller version of yourself. You will lose the weight, but you're not going to build any muscle. You're still going to look you still won't look cut and like diced as you want it. You're just going to be smaller and still have fat without much muscle, right? So at the very least, weight train 3 times a week and get 8 to 12,000 steps in every single day. And if you're doing this, then you're going to be able to build muscle and make it so much easier to burn fat if that's your goal. And your physique will look so much better if you're trying to gain, right? Muscle is a big component, but it has to be worked. Muscle isn't built from just eating protein, of course. It's built from micro tears in it, from that stress that you're putting into it, training it, and so that it grows back bigger and stronger, right? That's exactly how muscle's grown. And so it's impossible unless you're actually training. And so adding in your activity with your understood calorie goal and protein target, you're going to be able to hit your fitness goals without having to track macros or sacrifice your meals or anything like that. Like, for me, honestly, like, I've taken months off of dieting and training, and I still was able to look pretty well because I follow this principle. I make sure that I get my protein from certain meals, and I'm at the point where I'm able to eyeball like how much protein it is. So it's so easy. Like, when I was out of the country, I didn't have any of my tools. I didn't even have Wi-Fi on my phone. It feels like a third world country, you know? And I wasn't even worried about tracking calories or anything like that. And so this is the principle that actually helped me out. So I hope this was helpful. You know, this information honestly would be enough for you to actually get in the best shape of your life. I hope that you all sustainably do it for the rest of your life, because that's the goal. So yeah.